Honey, I've noticed that you haven't been spending a lot of nights at home lately. Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I just don't want to wake up Rachel. You know that. She's less than a year old and she's still so sensitive.
I understand that, but I miss having you around. It feels like you're avoiding being at home.
I'm not avoiding being at home. I just don't want to wake up Rachel.
It's not just about Rachel. I miss spending time with you too.
I feel like you're being too moody. I can't even have a valid reason for not spending nights at home without you getting upset.
Carl, I'm not being moody. I just miss you and want us to spend more time together as a family. Can we find a way to compromise so that we can all be happy?
I don't know what to say, Christine. You're being unreasonable, and it's making it really difficult for me to want to be at home.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Can we please try to find a way to compromise?
I can't deal with this right now. I said what I had to say.
Wait, Carl, please don't raise your voice like that.
Then shut up.
My name is Christine, and I'm in my late 30s. I met my husband Carl in college. I thought he was the love of my life. When we started talking, I was immediately drawn to his intelligence and his witty sense of humor. Before I knew it, I was head over heels in love. Little did I know that Carl was going to be the biggest mistake of my life. After graduation, we got married and started building a life together. We moved into a small apartment and started to work on our careers and our family. Things were going well, except for the fact that we didn't have kids. We kept trying multiple ways, but it did not work out. We felt like our dreams of starting a family were slipping away. I remember feeling so alone and hopeless, as if I had failed as a wife and as a woman. My relationship with Carl also went on a rough path. As charming and humorous as Carl was in college, he had always been a man with a short temper. It was becoming more and more difficult for me to cope with him since he was increasingly hot-headed and inconsiderate toward me. Just when I thought it would all fall apart, a miracle came to us. After 5 long years, we finally managed to conceive a child. We named her Rachel, something as beautiful and soft as the precious baby she was. Meanwhile, Carl's career was taking off, and he became a successful businessman. He often worked long hours and traveled frequently. But the good thing about it was that he made more money to afford everything nice for Rachel. I finally felt like our lives were going in the right direction again. Carl wanted me to put my career on hold to become a stay-at-home mom. During the first few months, I found myself yearning to return to work. My dad owned a company, and I worked for him as an assistant and manager in training. I had always loved my job and the sense of accomplishment it brought me. But Carl and I didn't want to leave Rachel for a nanny, at least until she was a little older. Plus, Carl was indeed making enough money for both of us. So despite my eagerness to return to work, I knew that being a stay-at-home mom was an important job too. I cherished the time I spent with Rachel and knew that the sacrifices I made would pay off in the long run. While staying at home, I became much closer with our neighbor, Lilia, who happened to work in the same field as Carl. At first, she seemed like just the kindest friend. We would often chat over coffee, and she would update me on the latest news from the industry. It was comforting to know that I had someone in my corner who understood what I was going through and could offer valuable advice. So I let my guard down. I invited her into our home multiple times, and thanks to my shared professional interest, she got along with Carl immediately. Rachel, our daughter, was a blessing to us, but it was really difficult for me to get her to sleep when she was a few months old. I would spend hours rocking her and singing lullabies, but she just wouldn't settle down. Even when I did manage to get her to sleep, she would wake up very easily. What's more, Carl would often come back home late, which also startled Rachel in the middle of the night. It was tough for both of us, and we were sleep deprived and struggling to keep up with our daily responsibilities. Once again, I felt my marriage getting tense, but I was so overwhelmed that I didn't know what more to do. One day, Carl came up with a solution. He offered to stay at hotels whenever he had to work late, so that he didn't interrupt Rachel's sleep or mine. While I appreciated his thoughtfulness, I did not like the sound of it. Carl was already working long hours, and I didn't want him to spend even more time away from home. Plus, I was having some really strange feelings about this arrangement. But since it seemed like that was the only way to help our little family gain back some peace, I eventually agreed with his suggestion. However, I could never shake off that weird feeling, and soon I found myself filled with anxiety and doubts. Carl began to spend his time at home way less often. At first, I tried to convince myself that it was just because he had a lot of work to do. But as the weeks went by, I became more suspicious. It came to a point where I felt like I had to confront him. That night, I was finally able to sit him down for a serious conversation. Honey, I've noticed that you haven't been spending a lot of nights at home lately. Is everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine. I just don't want to wake up Rachel. You know that. She's less than a year old and she's still so sensitive.
I understand that, but I miss having you around. It feels like you're avoiding being at home.
I'm not avoiding being at home. I just don't want to wake up Rachel.
It's not about Rachel. I miss spending time with you too.
I feel like you're being too moody. I can't even have a valid reason for not spending nights at home without you getting upset.
Carl, I'm not being moody. I just miss you and want us to spend more time together as a family. Can we find a way to compromise so that we can all be happy?
I don't know what to say, Christine. You're being unreasonable, and it's making it really difficult for me to want to be at home.
I'm sorry you feel that way. Can we please just try to find a way to compromise?
I can't deal with this right now. I said what I have to say.
Wait, Carl, please don't raise your voice like that.
Then shut up.
Carl was looking at me so intensely, I felt chills running along my bones. I had always known He had quite a short temper, but whenever he raised his voice at me, I couldn't help but shiver. Sometimes I wondered if it was healthy for me or Rachel to be under the same roof with him. It's like I always had to walk on eggshells around him. Overwhelmed with thoughts, I didn't know what to say. Then one day, Carl accidentally left his phone at home when he left for work. I didn't know why, but something told me to hold on to it as if there was something I needed to see. As soon as I looked over at it, I saw a message from his mom that popped up on the screen. I had such a great time. She was delightful. I have no doubt she's indeed the love of your life, honey. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't spent time with her much, and to be completely honest, I had always felt like she didn't quite like me, and she thought it was my fault that it took so long for us to have Rachel. She's never explicitly said anything about the matter, though. Again, it was just what my instinct was telling me. I scrolled up and saw that my husband's last conversation with her was 2 weeks ago, which was really weird to me. I knew that my husband was talking to his mom way more often than that. Was it because he had been so busy with work, or did he delete some messages? I went over all the other messages on his phone but found nothing suspicious. Suddenly, a thought came to me. I went over his email, and just as I suspected, I found one very suspicious conversation in his spam box. It was with someone who signed as Josh Marketing Dep, but their email address was a completely different name. Their chat was odd too. This person would send my husband very short emails like, "Have you done the report?" or "Did you see the new performance chart?" And my husband never replied. It looked to me like this Josh was not who he seemed to be. So many thoughts were clouding my mind. At that exact moment, I heard a car approaching our garage door. I looked outside to see my husband, and he seemed a little agitated and frustrated in the driver's seat. I knew that he had figured out where his phone was, and he was returning home to grab it. I had no time to hesitate. I followed my gut feeling, held onto my husband's phone, and ran all the way upstairs to grab my phone. I opened my phone and tried logging into his email. He had a note saved on his phone with his passwords to everything, so I managed to find the right one in just a few seconds. Then I used his phone to verify the login on a new device. The last step was to delete the verification email as if nothing happened. Just when I was finished with everything, I heard him walking up the stairs. I held onto his phone and walked toward him, acting like I just found it in the bedroom. "Honey, did you forget your phone?" Yeah, I thought I left it downstairs." "No, it was here." "Really? Pretty sure I bought it down here when I was having breakfast, though." "I'm not sure, honey. Just found it here. You might want to leave for work, though. It's getting late." "Right." Carl looked at the clock and tightened his eyebrows. He hated being late. Just like that, he left the house again. I was literally sweating, and I felt so bad for lying to him, but it just seemed like what I had to do. A few days later, Carl had to spend the night at hotel again. After wishing him good night, I couldn't sleep and held onto my phone. I was praying that nothing would happen and that I was just being irrational. But despite my prayers, the one thing I feared the most occurred. There was a new email from that Josh. "Have you done the report today?" It was always the same message, written in slightly different ways. I stared at it for way too long. I was just waiting to see if this Josh was actually who he said he was. Just a few minutes later, I reloaded the page. A new email had popped up, which appeared to be a response from my husband. My hands were shaking, but I opened it. What was written in there slowly but completely broke my heart. "Hey babe, I'm out tonight. Let's talk here because I think my wife was looking through my messages today. I forgot my phone at home and my mom's message was right there on the screen. My mom said she loved you, by the way. I mean, I wasn't surprised. Who wouldn't love you? But I just wanted to let you know. Anyway, want to come over?" My heart immediately sank. Everything was as clear as day. I started connecting the dots and realized what was happening. My husband was cheating on me. His mistress would always send him these emails to notify him that she wanted to chat. And whenever he could, he would text her before deleting all of their texts. Apparently, they went as far as seeing his mom together. They were serious. I spent the whole night crying. I just couldn't believe the truth. After so many years of pouring my heart into building a marriage, pulling myself up from there was definitely the hardest thing I had ever done. Eventually, I knew that I had to protect myself and my precious Rachel. We both deserved a better life. The next day, I planned to ask Leela to watch Rachel for me, while I would follow my husband to work. I wanted to find out who his mistress was. At the very least, I wanted to know what I was dealing with. But before I could take any action, the truth hit me like a truck. When I drove to Lilia's house to drop off Rachel, I lingered around a bit to chat. In the middle of our conversation, she had a phone call. I accidentally glanced at her screen for just 1 second when it lit up, but I saw it. The person calling was named Love of My Life with a heart emoji. I immediately thought of the text message from Carl's mom the other day, and once again, my world was turned upside down. It turned out that my husband was cheating on me with my best friend. Despite the countless emotions in my chest, I kept calm. Leela seemed flustered and tried to explain to me that she had been seeing someone, but it was nothing serious. She said that Love of My Life was just a silly nickname they gave each other after watching a nice romance movie. I gave her a smile, thinking of how much she must have been laughing at me this whole time. Of course, I couldn't stay there with her for too long. I brought Rachel back and started thinking about how I could deal with the whole situation. After days of grieving and considering all the options I had, I came up with a plan. First, I called my dad and asked him to find me the best lawyer in the city. Then, I checked my husband's email whenever I could to keep myself updated on what they were saying to each other. Shortly after, I found out that the only reason Carl hadn't divorced me was because of my father's business. He was waiting for me to inherit my father's company before filing for a divorce. Then he would marry Lilia. He wanted half of whatever I owned. No wonder why he had been warming up to my father so much. The truth was hard to accept, but I had cried enough. I decided to use Carl to my advantage. I told him that I had a great business opportunity lined up with my dad, so he could transfer a sum of money to our joint account to secure the investment. I knew that Carl was willing to invest a lucrative opportunity as much as he wanted my dad to trust him. The plan worked out much better than I had anticipated because Carl even borrowed from Lilia more money to invest. There was no contract and no promise. But Carl didn't suspect me for one bit. He somehow thought that I was still that stupid, naive wife. After a few months, the time came for me to take my revenge. I filed for divorce from Carl and sued him for cheating. The news hit him really hard, but I didn't owe him an explanation. I simply left our home and never looked back. Thanks to my dad's powerful legal team, I successfully claimed Rachel's custody and all of our joint properties. Carl was broke and had no choice but to pay up. Lilia left him almost immediately, and her affair with my husband became the news of the industry. She was the laughingstock for everyone, so much so that she had to quit her job. I felt a sense of relief knowing that justice had been served. But at the same time, I was devastated. My marriage was over, and I had lost someone who I thought was the love of my life. However, I knew I had to be strong for my daughter. I used the money that I had won from the lawsuit to provide for her and ensure that she had a comfortable life. We moved into a new home and started a new life together. I got back to work and started to rebuild my career. Over time, everything started falling into place. My career was going great, and I managed to regain that confidence I once missed so much. Rachel grows up to be such a beautiful, kind-hearted, and I'm so proud of her. Now, I am at such a good place in my life. Rachel is old enough to become my closest friend. She's even been encouraging me to get out there and start dating again. For the first time in so long, I feel so fulfilled and hopeful about everything in my life, and I have my beloved family to thank for it.